Do you think the press is being harder on him than Elliot Spitzer or you know, any of the other politicians? Jim McGreevey, the governor of New Jersey?
Well, first of all, McGreevey, being a native New Jerseyan, I reveled in that. Oh my God, that was just that was the summer of the best news ever. But it was like the old days. It was great. McGreevey was thrown under the bus by the Democratic Party. Everybody knew what was going on. Everybody had known for years it had been going on. That was nothing new, and that was a bone that was, you know, he was thrown under the bus because he was in other trouble. So the other trouble got, you know, under the rug, got swept under the rug, and this became the focus. That's why it was a big deal, because that was the focus. The real trouble got swept under the rug.
But either of you think that people are being harder on Sanford because he's a Republican?
I think these people set their own standards, and they should be held to them. Spitzer was the same thing.
I agree.
Spitzer, they went after him like crazy because he had set a really high standard.
You're right.
Exactly.
And it's the hypocrisy that does it. If you find, you know, a hippie lawmaker from, you know, from Vermont or from, right, who has never talked about moral values, who supports gay marriage, who's very socially liberal, and they have an affair, it will never make the front page. It will be. It will not be a primetime story. These guys caused their own problem.
The other problem is he fed the fire. I mean, by being absent, with no one knowing where he is, his own staff having to make up stories about being on the Appalachian Trail hiking. I mean, you know, he fed that fire.
Crazy stuff. A couple emails on this. William May writes in. He says, the emails that you were reading were just too hot. That's why the fire alarm went off. Juanita Rowan says, she writes in from Illinois. She says, I've heard enough about Mark Sanford. Let's talk about other things that are going on there. And yes, we will. Just a couple more emails. Tom says, I don't give a crap about the affairs of politicians. There are actually important issues to deal with, like cap and trade being rammed through the House tomorrow.
That's right.
And Matt calls Sanford a corny dumbass. That's probably one of the funnier ones I've seen. Okay, just a few minutes on cap and trade. You've been following that closely. What's going on tomorrow?
Well, this is what I find amazing. We know what Elliot Spitzer. We know what Mark Sanford. I get them confused. What went on back and forth in those emails? How many Americans know what's in cap and trade in the bill that's being rammed through because we promised we'd do it in the first year, so we're going to push it through? How many people know what's in there? Probably very few, but yet we all know, and I think that that's by design. I believe that that's by design. I believe it's, oh, look at the Republicans, look at how mess they are, and we're just going to do this over here. And nobody knows what's going on, nobody's talking about it. Cap and trade is going to wind up, they do it in Europe right now, and it's costing, I think, in England, the average family $1,200 extra in utility bills.
So bottom line for average folks, unless you're making very, very, very little money, it's going to cost us all a lot more in our electricity bills, and when we go to the store and we buy something from a supermarket, because those costs will be passed on to us.
What they're basically doing is capping industry and saying you can only, and they're going to make tighter and tighter restrictions every year. You can only use so much energy. You're going to get coupons. They're basically going to get coupons for the government that are good for X number of I don't know how, credits for fuel.
Michael, where's the outrage on the part of corporations affected by this? We started to hear from them before, but now they've been really silent.
Well, I think a couple of things. One is it's interesting that it's still being called cap and trade. I mean, if you look at all the reform debates that are out there now that have been, they've been titled with something that is catchy, either pro or con. Nobody understands what cap and trade is.
Exactly.
And so I think to your point, I mean, it may be
our
a strategy.
Folks do. Our strategy rumors do.
Well, yes, but most Americans don't have any idea what cap and trade is. And maybe that's by design from the Democrats, that they figure in this case, if you don't understand it, it's better off. The Republicans, I don't know why they haven't framed it in a way that's a little more controversial. Why aren't big corporations stepping up right now? I think there are a couple of things. One is they got a lot of problems on their plate. Healthcare reform is clearly at the top of the list. Even if you see the emails that come out from places like the Chamber of Commerce, the focus is largely right now on healthcare reform first, financial services reform second. They're having trouble, I think, keeping up a little bit.
Oh, that's a good point. That the industries affected by this are up to their ears in so many other issues.
Absolutely. I mean,
and the trade groups, too.
Also, the government is handing out and deciding who gets how many coupons, so big businesses are going to do okay because they have lobbyists. They're also going to get more from the government. They're going to be allowed a wider berth than smaller corporations. So big businesses aren't as worried about it right now. As the program continues and that cap becomes tighter and the restrictions become tighter and tighter and tighter, But you can also buy as other businesses. They fully expect businesses to go out of business. And they're saying, well, that's okay. Even if this drives you out of business, you can take those coupons and those credits and sell them to other corporations. So who's going to be able to afford to buy them? Big businesses.
Huh.
So they'll be able to buy those credits, those emissions credits. And so, therefore, then the restrictions won't be as tight on them because they can buy them from smaller corporations that go out of business.
Which is exactly why people aren't following it closely.
Exactly.
Because it's a complicated issue and you really have to spend your time on it.
And in Europe, the electricity rates fluctuate wildly. Whereas here, you pretty much know how much your electric bill is going to be every month. You can pretty much gauge it. Over there, it fluctuates wildly.
Is that so?
Yeah, because this helps.
So 1 month you could get a $200 bill, and another month you could get a $600 bill.
Well, I don't know. I guess it depends on how much electricity you use, but it's costing in England, the average family is paying about $1,200 more, and because of this system that they have that they instituted a couple of years ago.
No kidding.
There.
And so, what's your prediction? I mean, I imagine this is going to sail through the House.
You think?
So what happens then? Are there any are there any dissenters in the Senate that could hold it up?
I just think, like everything else, it's going to go through because nobody's reading it. I mean, it's 1,200 pages. It's not. Is it on the internet? I don't even know if it's on the internet. So much for transparency. And if it is, most people aren't going to read it. Most Americans aren't going to go read this because they're worried about where's my free health care. And they're going to get their quote-unquote free health care, and in the meantime, their electric bills are going to go up. The price of groceries and things like that are going to go up, and they're going to wonder why. Yeah. They're not going to know that it's directly tied to this. So I think for a while the Democrats are going to get a pass on it until people smarten up and go, oh my gosh, that's what that was, and then forget it. You're already down the river, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, speaking of other stuff that's rushing through Congress, health care reform. And the President and ABC News held their forum last night. And this is not the first kind of forum that ABC gave the President or a candidate. And I remember about a year and a half ago, Good Morning America dedicated virtually an entire hour from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern Time to Hillary Clinton and her health care plan. And Hillary was in Iowa, and Robin Roberts, the anchor, was asking softball questions, and the audience was filled with union members and other Hillary Clinton supporters before the Iowa caucuses, asking her all about her health care plan. And for a news network to have given that much time to Hillary Clinton, by the way, the ratings tanked, was unbelievable to me, and now this. What do you make of that, Michael?
Maybe it's good news for the opponents of healthcare reform, given how Hillary ended up doing it.
Right. But this is different. You have a different messenger this time.
Right.
President Obama.
Right.
Well, I think it's great strategy from the Obama administration. I mean, why wouldn't you want a primetime hour to cover and be able to tell your story with no opposition? So, great move by them. They're very smart politically. I don't know from the ABC perspective. Presumably, they think it's a great move as well. That Obama will attract the ratings on this issue, and I don't know how well it did, but I think it was a smart move, and I think it's going to help him at some level sell through healthcare reform. Mm-hmm. I think the Republicans are still having a tough time gaining a whole lot of traction with their message.
When you talk about message, and President Obama has been very cautious about the word single payer, and that's basically a government-run, the government controls your health care, the doctors work for the government, et cetera. He has really distanced himself from any notion of it being a single-payer system, even though that's something that he supports philosophically, a single-payer system. What is so... Do average folks get that single-payer... Do they think single-payer dangerous?
They don't know what single payer is.
Okay.
I mean, single payer is still foreign to them. What they do know is that universal coverage is going to cost them money. So most Americans don't necessarily support the idea of universal coverage because they believe that if they have health insurance and it's going to lead to more coverage for everybody else, it's going to cost them money, which is why you don't hear them talking about universal coverage as much anymore. What they talk about is reducing the spiraling cost of health care, ensuring choice, and the third plank of healthcare reform is improving quality, I guess, right? So they're very Republican messages that the Democrats are using to try and sell healthcare, which is right, and they've learned over the last couple of months that it really can't be about universal healthcare. It's got to be about something that's more personal to Americans. Mm-hmm. Most Americans actually are satisfied with their healthcare. Yeah.